All right. So we're going to be doing a lot of looking at stories and finding things and putting them in context. A lot of this chapter is putting it in context. So not just being able to read the equation or find the equation or write the equation, but to know what it means. All right. So we've got this story here. Oh, nope. I'm going to keep it right side up because I already started the video. All right. And I want us to find our slope, our y-intercept, and our x-intercept, and write the equation for this situation. Which would be a whole lot easier if we stopped staring at our cell phones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. Y'all are not nearly as sneaky as you think. That's okay. So we've got this story here. We've got to prepare for her road trip. I'm good at words. Jill filled up her 19-gallon tank, and she estimates that she's going to use about 3 gallons per hour. So we're asked to write an equation to model the amount of gasoline in her tank after some number of hours. How could we do that? Our first thing is going to be, like, the easiest way to start this is to look by trying to find our equation, maybe. It's going to involve some of these things, but what are we going to do? There's a few different ways to do it. All right, then let's start with our slope. There's a key word we have sometimes that we use when we look for slope. Per. I was going to say, so we're going to use the t hours, but we're looking for that per. So what is our slope going to be?
3 gallons.
The 3 gallons per hour. So our slope is going to be 3 gallons per hour. And that's really what our real world meaning is it's gallons per hour. Is she going to gain 3 gallons per hour, or is she losing 3 gallons per hour? Losing. She's using that. She's like spending it on miles. So is it going to be a positive 3 or is it going to be a negative 3? Negative. Because she loses 3 gallons per hour. So when it comes time to write an equation, that's going to be an important piece for us. What else do we have in here that might be helpful when trying to write an equation? The 19-gallon tank. She starts with 19 gallons. So what is that going to be? The y-intercept. The y-intercept is going to be our starting place for the most part on these. Like, I'm not going to do 100%, but most of the time the y-intercept is the starting place. So our y-intercept here is going to be 19. That's the number of gallons she started with. From those two pieces of information, we have enough to be able to write our equation. What's our equation going to be? Y equals? Mm-hmm. Plus 19. Absolutely valid way to write this. We could also use t instead of an x. We could also use g for gallons. Like, if you want to do it the way they want you to do it here is g equals minus 13t plus 19. But then they ask us for x and y intercepts. So pshaw to them, basically. So this is optional. I genuinely don't care. If we write everything in y's and x's, I'm 100% okay with that. Totally fine. The tricky one up here is to figure out our x-intercept. We know our y-intercept was 19. That's what she started with. And sometimes we'll write these as points. Y-intercept being 0, 19. So then what we're looking for is our x-intercept. And this is going to be something we're usually going to find from our equation. not going to be -3. That's our slope. Yep. I was going to say, we're going to have to solve for something. So our y-intercept happens when x is 0, right? Remember, these guys are always x comma y. So if our y-intercept happens, that's not how we do that. Y-intercept is what happens when x is 0. Our x-intercept was going to happen when y is 0. So we want to find out what x is going to be when y is 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute that in and do some solving, which I promptly took up every inch of the space I usually use for that. So I'm going to, like, you don't need to use your time on TikTok. We've still got a few more days. So I'm just giving myself a little space up here because I used up all my writing room. Boop. Matthew. So we're going to substitute in the 0 for y into our equation, our minus 3x plus 19. Oh, sorry. I didn't change that setting. There we go. Now it won't have to zoom in so much with me. Didn't realize I was doing that. What would we do to try and solve this and figure out what x is going to be? Subtract 19 on both sides. So I'm going to minus 19, minus 19. That's going to give us negative 19 equals negative 3x. Gorgeous. Super duper close. I'm going to say we're going to divide by that negative 3. Because I want to get that x by itself. So what does our x equal? Say it again. Yep, 6.3333333333333. I'm going to go 2 decimal places because that's just a little silly. 6.33-ish. So our x-intercept is 6.33. Could be more. We get this when y equals 0. So that's what this is. Just going to put that down so we remember. That's how we get our x-intercept. And then our real world meaning, sometimes it's easier to do when we do write it as a point. So I'm going to, over here, use this little blue space again. I'm going to write it as a point so we can see what I mean. So I'm going to put this as my 6.33, comma 0. What do our x's stand for again? What does each x mean? Mm-hmm. Is it gallons? Because we've got gallons here with our y-intercept. Yeah, it's our hours. So this is hours because this guy is gallons. Y's are gallons. So if 6.33 is the number of hours and 0 is the number of gallons, what does that mean? What that is it takes 6.33 hours for her tank to empty, for her to be out of gas. In 6.33 hours, so our x is hours, 0 gallons left. Our y is 0. So it's all about what x is and what y is. So we got to figure those pieces out. Those are super important pieces, but there's just some kind of clues in here that help us find that. When we figured out what she started with, that helped us figure out that our y is gallons. When in doubt, you can look at your slope. If you found your slope, to find that it was gallons per hour. And remember, that's our rise. Rise rhymes with y's over run. We run across the x's. So y's is gallon, x is hours. So it's the number of hours we needed until she has nothing left. Okay? So we're going to practice this with a few different ways of looking at it. This one was looking at kind of a paragraph. We're going to look at a table for number 2. And then we're going to look at a different kind of style one on number 4. Just because those are the pieces. Okay, I have to figure out how to turn the notifications off on the Chinese TikTok app. Okay. Questions on this one? Because then we're going to look at number 2. We've got Roberto depositing the same amount of money each month into a checking account. And he writes down some of his balances over here in this table. He's not super great at keeping track of stuff, so he's missed a couple that he didn't write down. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of workspace over here because this is all pretty, but I want to have the space to write. So we've got this table. What the heck do we do to try and find something? First things first, what's x and what's y? Yeah. X is going to be the number of months. Whenever we have a unit of time, that's going to be x. Because time controls my balance doesn't go back in time. If I spend a whole bunch of money and my balance goes down, it does not magically make me go back in time. So if x is the number of months, that means y is the balance in the account. Awesome sauce. Super duper helpful. How can we figure out our slope? We're used to thinking about slope in the terms of like y equals mx plus b, that kind of guy. And so we're thinking about that m being our, again, rise over run. The other way we write this is the change in our y's and the change in our x's. The triangle means change. If you ever did physics class, they'll see that. Triangle means change. It's a delta, technically. It's a Greek thing. But all it means is the change in our y's and the change in our x's. If we really have a good memory, we might remember the formula. You don't need to remember the formula because we can do it without. But if you remember that y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, that guy, that's another valid way of doing this. You do not have to memorize that formula. You do not have to come back to it. Because what I'm really going to ask you is, how did the y's change? What happened to 255 to make it go to 365? We added, how much? 110. We added 110. How did our x's change? We added 2. So the change in y's was 110. The change in x's was 2. What is 110 divided by 2? 55. So our slope is 55. It's the change in y's over the change in x's. And we could check that here too. We could do the same thing here. Change in y's, change in x's to make sure they match. Right now we're just looking at linear equations. When we get to higher things, I'll show you what to look for. What does that mean? 55 what? $55. So our balance, so that's what that is. So our y's are first. $55 into the balance per month. So that per helps us, and we can use that as a word too. It's going to be y per x. Balance, which is dollars, per month. Then we want to look for the y-intercept. What do we want to do for our y-intercept? I know, I'm so funny. Oh my gosh. It's almost like the your belly button and no workbook in front of you makes us giggle so hard. Maybe let's not watch Instagram or TikTok like this in class. You're so subtle. I totally cannot tell that we're watching our cell phone in our lap. Yeah. I'm not putting anything on record for anybody ever. We still should not stare at our cell phone at our belly button in our class and then giggle at it. It's like, I'm chill, but I'm not that chill. All right. So our y-intercept, we did this, we kind of talked about it with the last one. Our y-intercept happens when x is 0. So we want to know what happens when x is 0. Few ways to do it. You can either work your way backwards in the table. You can kind of try and figure out your equation and solve that way. I think backwards in the table is probably the easiest because we want to know what happens when x is 0. So if I want to go the wrong way, 1 unit, what am I going to do here to figure out how much was in his account at month 0? Subtract the 55 that he put in. So what is the balance at month 0? 200. And that's exactly what we're looking for here. Our y-intercept is going to be 200. And that is the balance when x is 0. Or month 0. Or balance he started with. There's a number of ways to say it. You can use words. At beginning. So then we're going to try and figure out our equation. It's usually easier to do these two, then our equation, then do our x-intercept. So how are we going to write this as an equation? Y equals 55x plus 200. Gorgeousness. And then our last piece on this one is to find our x-intercept. So again, I want to know what x is when y is 0. So I'm going to take and substitute in, let's see, I want to know what x is when y is 0. So we're going to substitute in 0 for y. And we want to know when that happens. 55x plus 200. I know I'm right on top of words, but there we go. Better-ish. What are we going to do first? Subtract 200. Minus 200 equals 55x. Then what? Divide by 55. Gorgeousness. What do we get for our x-intercept? I was going to say I've got one important thing we've missed.
Oh,
Negative 3.63 or negative 3.6-ish. So our x-intercept is happening at negative 3.63, blah, 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 whatever it is. What does that mean? Negative 3.6 what? Months. Our x, our per, our x, whatever it is. So it's 3.6 months before he started. So real world-wise and context-wise, this doesn't actually make sense. But we can still find our x-intercept. But 3.6 months before he started adding money, I guess, is when his balance would be 0. Which balance does not have 2 words. So sometimes, especially these x-intercepts, don't actually make sense. If we get negative in terms of months, context-wise, it doesn't make anything sense. Because I can't have that his bank account was negative, or was 0 3.6 months before he put money into it. Like, I can't unmake a bank account. Like, that doesn't go back in time. So it's a time travel one, so there's an argument to be had for saying that it just like doesn't exist. But we can still find the x-intercept. It's just context-wise, it's annoying. Okay, we're going to do one more. We're going to skip over number 3 because it's very, very similar to number 2, except for the fact that it's Fahrenheit and Celsius. So we're going to look at number 4 because it's a slightly different setup on this one. We've got that at the beginning of October, Monique changed banks and decided to leave her remaining $3,900 in her old checking account to pay for rent. After 6 months, her balance was 0. So, what pieces do we have here? What do you got, Cameron? The slope is not 6, but it's a good instinct. Good instinct. What'd you get? Which one? What are you talking about? More specific. Yeah, if after 6 months, so meaning her time is 6, her balance is 0. So that means if I made a table here, where we usually have our x's being months and our balance be 0, she says at 6 months, she has no money. Whenever we have a unit of time, that's going to be our x's, and our money is going to be our y's. So this 6, 0 is which point? When she has 0 in her account. Is that our x-intercept or our y-intercept? Our x-intercept. So they actually handed us our x-intercept on this one. So we have her 6. It's when she runs out of money. What other information do we have in here? I'm just going to switch the blue to purple so we match. We have the starting amount. She's starting at $3,900. So what part is that? Our y-intercept. So that means at month 0, she had $3,900. Put it like that. Month 0, dollar balance. So how can we figure out our slope? Yeah. We're looking for our change in y's over the change in x's. So what we wind up doing is we're seeing how much subtracting 3,900 over the course of 6 months is going to do. So how much did she spend each month? $650. Is it going to be a positive $650 or a negative $650? Negative. Because she starts with some money and then she's spending it. Except that was backwards for you. She's spending her money as time goes on. So our slope is going to be negative $650, and it's the amount of money per month. So our slope is always going to be y's per x, rise per run, y's per x. It's the amount of money per month spent. So let's write our equation. It's the last one on this one. Y equals. What's it going to be? Negative 650x plus 3,900. Gorgeousness. Okay. I encourage you to look at 3 at some point. It's kind of interesting, but it's a lot more decimally because it is like a for realsies thing converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit, and it's just kind of icky. The next one that's on the next page, number 5, it's technically still a part of this, number 5, that's actually what the next piece of homework is. That's the question. So if you have your Chromebook, you can do it right on it, but it's straight up just exactly like those ones we just did. You can do it. It's very, very, very much like the ones we just did. So you're going to find our slope. We're going to figure out where she started. We're going to figure out where she ends, and we're going to write the equation. Okay, so you can do it in Canvas. You need to do it in Canvas. You will do it in Canvas. But if you need space to work or space to write or anything, that next page that has number 5 has plenty of space for you to do so. Okay, I encourage you to look back at number 3. It's kind of interesting and kind of cool, but it does get a little decimally, which is why I didn't use it as one of the ones we did up on the screen. And I also wanted to make sure you guys had time to work on that homework because I like to make sure you guys don't wind up with homework at home. Because honestly, I know it will never get done. Just real talk. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes, 12 minutes technically. Honestly, you could probably get it done. And if not, you can save it and come back to it later. We'll have time. We'll have time this week.